Thank you so much for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, Israel pounding away at Hamas positions as the Jewish state forms a national emergency government to deal with the war. We're going to bring you the story on more on that and the hostages taken by Hamas from Jerusalem. What was Iran's involvement in the Hamas attack? The Biden administration officials are saying they don't have direct evidence. Others saying Iran is deeply involved. We're going to hear from former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on what he believes needs to be done. If the war between Israel and Hamas expands, what could be the impact on global markets and your wallet? We're going to have a look at the possible economic fallout. And standing with Israel, Americans across the country gathering together to show their support for Israel during this time of trial. All those stories and more are ahead today on CBN News Watch.
This is CBN News Watch.
Let's begin this half hour in Israel, which is striking Hamas targets inside Gaza today, while the Israeli Defense Forces are amassing a ground army for an imminent invasion of the Gaza Strip. All this as the war has entered its sixth day. Chris Mitchell brings us more now from Jerusalem.
Wednesday night, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced a national emergency government with Benny Gantz, former IDF chief of staff and head of the National Unity Party.
People of Israel, tonight we created a national emergency government. Israel's united, and tonight its leaders are united too. We've put aside every other consideration because the fate of our country is laid on the table.
Netanyahu said every member of Hamas is a dead man and expressed the horror at what Hamas has done.
We saw boys and girls bound who were shot in the head, men and women burned alive, young men who were raped and slaughtered, soldiers who were beheaded.
After a three-day battle, IDF forces took back the village of Be'eri. Major General Itai Veru described what happened.
People that capture and their hand was blocked and someone kills them. Children in the same room, then someone come and kills them all. 15 girls and teenagers that put in the same room, 3 hand grenades, and it's over. This is a massacre. It's pogrom.
Israeli leaders compare Hamas to ISIS and found this ISIS flag in a kibbutz taken over by Hamas. Israel continued to strike Hamas targets inside Gaza, while Israeli troops and materiel amassed on the Gaza border for a possible ground incursion. Up north, a false alarm sent 1 million Israelis into bomb shelters Wednesday night, but the situation remains tense, with many wary of an attack by Hezbollah in Lebanon in a two-front war. Israel estimates Hamas kidnapped more than 160 hostages, and President Biden told a roundtable of Jewish leaders it was the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust, and he's doing a lot to rescue those Americans held hostage by Hamas.
We want to make it real clear. We're working on every aspect of the hostage crisis in Israel, including deploying experts to advise and assist with recovery efforts. I have not given up hope of bringing these folks home.
Citizens from 36 nations are missing, murdered, or hostages. CBN News interviewed Sasha Ariev. Hamas kidnapped her sister Karina out of an IDF base on the border.
Maybe you don't see me crying, but I'm broken and devastated inside. I'm just trying to keep it together for my family, both parents and my sister, and to be strong and to believe and spread the hope that she and all the other hostages and missing people will come soon back home.
In the meantime, the U.S. administration is rushing resources to Israel, like a carrier strike group, F-35 and F-15 fighter jets, needed ammunition, and interceptors to replenish the Iron Dome aerial defense system. Secretary of State Blinken arrived today in a show of support and meetings with Netanyahu. And Hamas leader Khaled Mashal called Muslims worldwide to stage a day of jihad or holy war and a day of rage on Friday, October 13th.
And Chris is with us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, what is the latest on the fighting between Israel and Hamas at this hour?
Well, Ephraim, Israel's continuing to strike targets inside Gaza and then amasses this massive force, almost 500,000 men and women, and then weapons tanks, APCs on the northern and the southern border, expected to go into Gaza, but we don't know for sure. We don't know when. We have heard from the IDF spokesman that we're never going to see anything like this. We don't know exactly what that means, but obviously these plans have been in place for a while. But one of the things we're expecting, Ephraim, right now is that possible ground incursion today, tomorrow. We'll see maybe by the weekend.
Now, as you reported, Israel now has a national emergency government. How will that work?
Well, the way it works is that the National Unity Party, which is led by Benny Gantz, he's a former IDF chief of staff, former defense minister. Pat Robertson has interviewed him a few times up on the northern border when he was a commander up there. He has joined Netanyahu and the current coalition, so they're going to be sort of like a war cabinet. And with his experience, that's, I think, going to put a lot of Israelis at ease. So he's joined. The other leader of the opposition, Yair Lapid, hasn't joined yet. We don't know why that hasn't. Maybe some of the terms of the deal has not been worked out. But right now, at least, I think Israelis are satisfied that there's somewhat of a unified front against Hamas right now.
Hamas is holding Israeli hostages and possibly some Americans and others as well. How is Israel trying to get them out?
Well, they're going to have experts working on this, but, Ephraim, they've never faced anything quite like this right now. They consider they're in secret locations, and it certainly was part of the Hamas plan to kidnap these hostages and then put them in multiple locations, not just one, but all over the Gaza Strip. That magnifies the difficulty of trying to get these people out. Some people may be in secret places or buried alive in some of the tunnels, those tunnels that are always throughout the Gaza Strip. So it's going to be extremely difficult to get these hostages out, while on the same time the IDF is trying to militarily destroy Hamas and its infrastructure there in the Gaza Strip.
So many moving parts. Chris, a former head of Hamas, is calling for a global day of jihad tomorrow. What exactly does that mean?
Well, that's Khalid Mashal. He's the head of Hamas. And what that means is that he's calling on Muslims here in Jerusalem, around the world, to rise up in anger and protest. The rallying cry, which has been for years, is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is that mosque on the Temple Mount, considered by some Muslims the third holiest place in all of Islam. And so that, for years and years, has been a rallying cry, and that's what Khalid Mashal is trying to rally Muslims around. The attempt is that he's blaming Israel to attack or undermine the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and give them the religious fervor they can to rise up against Israel and all over the world.
Chris, you know what a difference a week makes. Just a week ago, Christians were in the streets of Jerusalem showing their support for Israel. But now the Jerusalem Post reports that Jerusalem is like a ghost town. Tell us about that change in just a week.
Yeah, Ephraim, I remember last Wednesday, I was part of the Jerusalem parade. We were there reporting on it. We were talking to many of the people there, as you see in the video here, walking down the streets of Jerusalem. Thousands of Israelis lined the streets, and thousands of Christians, really almost tens of thousands of Christians, came from around the nations, more than 90 nations, to show their support and solidarity with Israel. And now the streets are literally nearly empty. It's sort of like a Shabbat around here when there's very few cars or things. Many shops have closed. A lot of restaurants have closed. There's a few grocery stores open, but that's about it. I mean, it has become a ghost town in a matter of days.
We certainly appreciate your reporting and are praying for you, but I have to ask, are you and the CBN staff there in Jerusalem safe?
Well, Ephraim, we, like almost all Israelis right now, are under the threat of rocket fire. It's been a couple of days now, but we heard the Iron Dome anti-missile system hit rockets out of the air. We've seen and heard the sirens. That happens more about an hour and a half drive away from here near the Gaza border. But it's disconcerting for all of Israelis, including ourselves, living in a war zone like that. There is always the threat, not so much now from Hamas on the southern border, but even greater threat possibly would be the northern border if that opens up. Hezbollah is an exponentially larger force than Hamas, has many more rockets, maybe up to 150 to 200,000, can hit almost anywhere in Israel, and precision-guided missiles, which really exacerbates the threat from rockets. So yeah, we're on. But you know, Ephraim, we're praying daily, hourly sometimes, and we're looking to Psalm 91. That he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty.
That is indeed our prayer for you and the entire team. Our CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you so much. Coming up, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo talks about Iran's role in the Hamas invasion, the Biden administration's response, and what the U.S. should be doing. We're going to hear from him when we come back. Stay with us. Many in Washington, along with international affairs analysts and others, say Iran was behind this murderous Hamas attack on Israel. Congressional Republicans were reportedly very unhappy with the briefing by the Biden administration officials Wednesday. Axios reporting officials from the State and Defense Department said they had no direct evidence of Iran's involvement in the planning of the attack, something one Republican called unbelievable. But National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said the administration's assessment of Iran's involvement could change in the days ahead. In an interview with CBN's David Brody on Real America's Voice, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made clear he believes Iran is definitely involved.
Make no mistake, this isn't just Hamas. I think the Biden administration wants to pawn this off of just saying, oh, this was a bunch of knuckleheads in the Gaza Strip. Not true. This is the Iranian regime. Directed, funded, green-lighted. You pick your verb. Make no mistake, this is the Iranian regime seeking to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, killing Jews in ways that hasn't happened in decades and decades. The responsibility that the Israeli leadership has to defend its own people. This is an American challenge, not just an Israeli challenge, and we need to meet the moment.
Mike Pompeo, what does that mean specifically when it comes to Iran and specifically to America's involvement in what looks like is going to be a long, bloody war? And obviously, if Hezbollah gets involved in the north, that changes the calculus even more. What does American involvement look like? And I know that is a bit hypothetical, and we don't know exactly what's coming. But this is more than just sending $4 billion or so, $3.8 billion a year to Israel at this point. What does America need to do in this moment right here, specifically regarding Iran? They cannot get away with this stuff.
David, you're right. America's involvement begins with something that I pray that the Biden administration could do, acknowledging that their policies have failed. This is the responsibility of Hamas and the terrorists. This is directed by the Islamic Republic of Iran. But the Biden administration's Iran policy has set the conditions for this. Not just $6 billion for hostages, not just $230 million to the Palestinian Authority so they could kill more people in Israel while paying the slayers of those murderers. They failed to enforce the basic sanctions, $20, $30, $40 billion to the Iranian regime in just 2.5 years by being able to sell crude oil around the world. So what does it look like? America should go back to the set of policies that deny Iran the capacity to do precisely what they did on October 7th. Take away their money, impose sanctions on the leadership, deny them the capacity to inflict this terror around the world, isolate them. Build out relationships with our friends and allies in the Gulf Arab states, create peace and prosperity in the region, and push back, protect the Iranian people as well from the horrible, horrible predations that have been put upon them by the Ayatollah and President Raisi.
What is it going to mean for Gaza specifically? They're going to obviously go into Gaza. They're going into Gaza. This is not just obliterating Hamas. This has to do with specifically controlling on the ground what's happening in Gaza. How do you see that? This is going to change the Middle East forever.
Oh, undoubtedly, David. I still don't think the world has fully taken on board the scale of what took place on October 7th and what that means for the world. As for Gaza, we know the history. The Israelis did what the world demanded of them. They withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005. Give the Palestinians a state, and you see what they did. They put the terrorists in charge. They harmed not only the Palestinians and the Arabs living there, but they've now inflicted enormous pain on the nation of Israel as well. I think the Israelis will do exactly what they need to do. They will eliminate this threat in ways that they've not done when previous attacks took place. I pray only this, David. Your point's right. This is going to take weeks and weeks and weeks. The United Nations, other countries around the world will immediately begin to demand that Israel stop, they cease fire, they back off. Israel needs to be permitted to do the tasks it views in its own national interest to protect and defend its own people. And the United States needs to not direct them to stand down, as as Secretary Blinken's tweet now removed did, or as the tweet from the Palestinian office, the U.S. Palestinian office there did in the immediate aftermath of the attacks. We need to simply say to the Israelis, tell us what it is you need so that you can protect your own people and protect Americans that are living in the region as well.
Still ahead, what the economic fallout could be from the war between Israel and Hamas, how it might affect the rest of the world, including the United States. We're going to take a look at those questions when we come back. Stay with us. If the war between Israel and Hamas expands and brings in more countries, it would likely have far-reaching implications beyond the Middle East, including here in the United States. Gary Lane brings us this look at the potential impact on global markets, oil, and your wallet.
As a major player in the global economy, the United States is not immune to the economic ripples caused by geopolitical conflicts. The stock market has already experienced fluctuations as investors react to uncertainty surrounding the Israel-Hamas war. A primary concern is the global oil market. As fighting escalates, there could be supply disruptions, followed by a spike in oil prices. Brandon Pizzurro is the incoming president of Guidestone Funds, America's largest faith-based mutual fund company. He believes consumers may experience higher gasoline prices in the days ahead.
When you have one of these, tremendous, shock events, as you might call them, is people need to initially first digest that. And that first playthrough, or that bleed through, is initially going to be into the oil prices. And that's where people are initially going to feel that pain. And one of those first things that people think about when they say, is my cost of living going up? And pain at the pump is certainly something we're going to have to grapple with for a little bit of time here.
Any direct Iranian intervention could lead to blockades and supply bottlenecks in the oil-rich Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz. Less oil availability would directly affect transportation and production, potentially leading to increased prices for goods and services. In turn, a likely jump in inflation could hamper consumer purchasing power.
Wars in general are inflationary, which really starts to kind of go against this disinflationary environment that the Fed and other global central banks are looking for. So you see that inflation rise because the cost of production, oil certainly is an inflationary measure.
This week, Wall Street investors nervously watching Middle East developments found a bright spot. Defense-related stock prices climbed after the Pentagon pledged to send advanced weapons to Israel. The bottom line, what happens in Gaza doesn't stay in Gaza. The war is a complex web that extends elsewhere. The United States, with its interconnected economy, is not immune to the repercussions. And with a ground war now almost certain, global markets are likely to remain volatile. Pizzurro urges people not to panic and instead respond with prayer.
Any time of distress like this, the only way to turn is to God and to think about what is at play. God, of course, knows exactly what's at play, and it's for us to rely on Him and put our faith in the Lord. The Lord also calls us to be bold and brave in our faith and standing pat with those who we ally ourselves with. So praying for Israel, praying for the people, praying for a peaceful resolution is certainly what we need to do, but not being fearful.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
And you can hear more from him on this week's episode of The Global Lane. Also, a documentary film producer insists Michelle Obama is getting ready to challenge Joe Biden for president. And why is Syracuse University shutting the doors of a church? You can catch The Global Lane this evening on the CBN News Channel. It begins at 8 Eastern. You can also see it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Coming up, showing support for Israel, we're going to look at how Americans have come together in community gatherings around the country to stand in solidarity with the Israeli people in this time of trial. We're going to have that story for you when we come back. Please stay with us.
Download the CBN News app. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Get the CBN News app today.
As the world looks with horror at the Hamas atrocities in Israel's American cities are showing support for the Israeli people. CBN's Brody Carter brings us that story from here in Virginia Beach.
Community gatherings like this one here at the United Jewish Federation of Tidewater in Virginia offers the community an opportunity to grieve and begin the healing process. Now, the Attorney General says that his Christian faith is what's a driving force with him to stand with the nation of Israel, and he invites America to do the same thing.
I think my faith tells me that I'm to grieve with those that are grieving. And right now, so many in the Jewish community are grieving.
Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares is an outspoken ally of the Jewish people. In February, he helped create the state's anti-Semitism task force, aware it's more important than ever to protect American Jews.
Right now, our most immediate concern is security. I've been in constant communication with the Secretary of Public Safety and the state police about enhanced security at both Jewish day schools or Jewish community centers.
I personally can't speak for others, but I personally feel very comfortable as an Israeli in Tidewater.
Israeli native Nofar Trem came to America 5 years ago. Her family remains in Israel and survived the attack.
Stand up for Israel as much as you can, whether it's in personal conversations, on social media.
CEO of the United Jewish Federation of Tidewater, Betty Ann Levin, condemns the assault in the strongest possible terms.
This is not about Jews and Palestinians. This is about Hamas, a terrorist organization, wanting to go in and wipe Israel off the map.
Support is growing nationwide, with 18 rallies held in major cities, including New York, Boston, and Las Vegas, in conjunction with the Israeli-American Council.
Too many to name individually today.
And while the trauma will linger, the hope remains that hearts will begin to heal. Reporting in Virginia Beach, Virginia, Brody Carter, CBN News.
It's time now for your Thursday Thankful, and today I hope you'll join me in this prayer of gratitude. Father, thank you for creating me to be all that you've called me to be and giving me all that I need to be me. Help me not to forget the treasure you have placed on the inside of me. And to that prayer, all I can say is amen and amen. It is so. It is indeed so. That will do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. I want to remind you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online. That address is cbnnews.com. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. Please email us, newswatch@cbn.com, or you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly love hearing from you. Make this a thankful Thursday and join us right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.